What's going on, everybody? This is Brent0331, and this is our Monday night live stream. And we really don't have a specific topic for tonight, so we thought it'd be just fun to go around the horn and talk current events and question and answers. So this is your guys' time. If you got questions or just ideas for topics and stuff, throw them in the chat. Better yet, do a super chat, and it's more likely to get picked up by us. But nonetheless, I'm going to go around the horn and introduce everybody. So first and foremost, no stranger to live stream. We got Les with Pegasus Tests. That is his YouTube channel. Be sure to go ahead and check that out. He is a Marine that served in the early 90s. He's a veteran of the Gulf War. He has his own tactical training company called Polaris Tactics and Simulations Division, and has his own worldwide shipping company called Polaris Worldwide Shipping. Did I get that right, or fuck it up again?
Polaris Worldwide Logistics.
I don't have my little note card in front of me tonight, so I'm getting
it. Brent, 50 more live streams, you'll have it down.
Yeah. Seriously. So, anyways, guys, welcome Pegasus Test on the stream tonight. Thanks for joining us, bud.
Happy to be here, Brent.
All right, next we got the good Bruce, aka Boomer Jr. Be sure to check out his YouTube channel, Bruce at Camp Armament. That's also his Instagram handle. And Bruce is a good buddy of mine. You guys have seen that he's been my right-hand man on YouTube for a long time now. But he also has his own YouTube channel. And for the first time in, I think, a year, he posted a YouTube video recently. So welcome to the chat tonight, Bruce.
Thanks for having me, Brent.
All right. And one of our newest members of the chat, we got Jared with 2 Alpha Solutions. That is his YouTube channel. He's a Navy veteran. He's also a farrier. So he does some illicit stuff with horses, right? I think there's an OnlyFans for that. But
it's all about horse feet.
yeah. You got a fetish for horse feet. Check out his YouTube channel. But Jared was my competitor in the Grunt Proof Seer Challenge Season 2, and he's just a great freaking dude, and he's been on several chats lately. So Jared, thanks for jumping on tonight.
Appreciate it, brother.
All right, guys. Well, that is our panel tonight. I don't know if any of our other usual suspects are going to jump on late or not, but if they do, we'll welcome them then. So going to open up the floor. Again, we don't have a specific topic tonight, but I am going to introduce one. And that one is, give me 1 second. I'm going to pull it up here. All right. I know suspense is killing everybody. All right, here we go. So there was a former U.S. Army First Sergeant that during the 2020 George Floyd riots, and I think it might have been Austin. Yeah, I believe it was Austin, Texas. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. He was an Uber driver. He was driving through, and one of the protesters approached his vehicle with a AK-style rifle. And long story short, this gentleman shot him, claimed self-defense. Austin PD investigated, found that essentially he was acting in self-defense, so they didn't file charges. And then your very liberal Austin DA, regardless of what the police said, picked up the case and went to trial. And guess what? He was convicted of murder in Austin. So now you have the Texas governor as essentially asked for the Board of Pardons, I believe it's called, to look into coming up and potentially pardoning this guy, despite being convicted of murder by that Austin jury. So I think this will be a good topic to start off with. So I'm going to kick it over to Les, and you're our usual starting pitcher. So you got the con, brother.
No problem. Happy to lead this patrol off. All right. So this case is interesting to me in the fact of, from my point of view, it's very clear-cut self-defense, as clear-cut as Kyle Rittenhouse was. Yet at the same token, that doesn't seem to matter. The DA and the liberal government of that city have an agenda, and they were going to ram it down this poor guy's throat. Innocence or guilt seems to be almost irrelevant. I am happy to see your all's governor down there in Texas stand up and say, no, I want him pardoned, and talking to the pardon board, whatever you guys do in Texas to make a pardon happen. It looks like he's trying to get that fast-tracked. Not only should this guy not have been convicted, in my opinion, should have never gone to trial.
All right, fellas. Yeah, so I've not kept up real close on this topic. I'm sure we'll key off of those of you in the chat somewhere that might be a little bit more spun up on it than we are. But it brings up some, to me, looking at the details of these cases, and I do like to follow these court cases, especially when they're televised, like the Rittenhouse trial was. I've learned a lot about how the court system works that way, and in some ways how corrupt it can be, and sometimes, of course, politicized. And it looks like that's what's happened here, and it's brought up some interesting topics. Seems like the process here is going to be that there is like Brent said, a pardon board or some type of board that must take this case to the governor before the governor can pardon. So he can't just nilly-willy go, I don't like the results of this case, I'm going to pardon this guy, like a presidential pardon would be, I think. That doesn't work in the state of Texas like that. So the governor can then pardon the case should he choose to, and he's already on the record saying as soon as it comes to his desk, he's got the pen and he's ready to pay for it. A couple of other interesting comments he made is he made something to the point of that he doesn't respect jury nullification. Now that opens up a whole nother can of worms. Do we want politicians that don't respect jury nullification? That's something that we can probably discuss about. And I don't know how many of you are familiar with the topic, but it's interesting in that basically the way it works. Judges hate it. Judges a lot of times won't even let it be brought into the case. But I believe that Frank James, for example, the old Confederate Frank James, Jesse James' brother, part of the James gang, was tried and should have been convicted based on all the evidence. And the jury said, we don't care about the evidence. We kind of like this guy. We like what he did. We like the fact that he was robbing the federal union government, and we're not going to convict him. And they didn't. And that would be an example of jury nullification where someone should be convicted. They've met all the bars of being convicted, and the jury just refuses to do so or refuses to take the judge's instruction on how to convict and does what the hell they want to do. This is a reverse situation with Abbott, where Abbott's basically saying these people, his position is they convicted him based on political means, and he was wrongly convicted. They should have found him innocent, and instead he's going to essentially nullify what the jury's done on his own and free the guy if he has the opportunity, or pardon the guy. So anyway, we'll get into that and see how it goes. It should make for an interesting discussion.
Muted.
There we go. So many of these self-defense cases anymore are just being politicized. The liberal left, the left-leaning DAs, they're trying to do anything they can to stop gun control or stop this gun movement and implement gun control to the point where you can't even defend yourself anymore in a life-threatening situation. And it just, everything is politicized. And until we can stand up and make these DAs and these Commonwealth attorneys across the country that are politicizing these incidents where people are actually standing up for their rights and they're defending their lives and their families' lives, when they're held accountable, that's what needs to be done. These Commonwealth attorneys, and that's what we call it in Virginia, Commonwealth attorneys or district attorneys, wherever you're at, they need to be held accountable for these political kangaroo courts, because it's going to make somebody hesitate in the future to defend themselves or their families or anything like that. And people are going to lose their lives over it. Innocent people are going to lose their lives over it.
And you guys brought up some great points, and just kind of piggybacking off of what you guys are saying. Bruce, talking about the jury, and I just want to say, like, in a criminal trial like that, it's got to be proof beyond a reasonable doubt, right? So essentially, if the defense can argue a reasonable doubt, you can't convict that guy. So I'm sitting here and I'm looking at this, and again, I don't know the case front and back. I've seen a little bit, but I would think that if the Austin Police Department investigates this and they determine that it's a self-defense shooting, and then at trial later, after a liberal, DA picks up the trial, despite what Austin PD says, and it goes to, trial, how in the world is there not reasonable doubt when you have a no kidding police department investigation that finds that the gentleman acted in self-defense? Like, that just blows my mind. So I think what Bruce said is 100% accurate. The jury, they were given their, jury guidance and everything. And they just said, to hell with, beyond a reasonable doubt, we're going to convict this guy regardless. And then going back to what Jared said about like DAs just picking up whatever cases they feel they want. I think about New York, and it's like, you got all this crap going on in New York where they're just letting criminals walk free for, this, that, and the other. And then what do? They go after Trump, and they try to fry Trump on, just ridiculous crap. So, just unbelievable. I'm going to open up the floor, guys, so we can kick this around. Les, you're muted.
That's a great point, Brent. Cities are falling apart. This guy's getting railroaded. But the big thing is Trump may possibly sort of kind of paid off a stripper. Who the fuck cares? It's a stripper. In Donald Trump's money, $130,000 is chump change. He'd get a $130,000 bill from his lawyer and wouldn't even think anything about it. It's not at his level. That's not where you even question the bill, So we've got the district attorney up there in New York taking a misdemeanor that's expired, somehow conflating that he has the authority to enforce federal law at the state level. And then it's because he was furthering a crime, but they won't tell us what the other crime is. And we wonder why people are losing faith in the system. I know that kind of went high and to the right off the topic of our poor man down there in Texas, but it's just endemic of the problem of the justice system right now. We see a guy in Austin get railroaded on a clear self-defense case, and we're seeing Trump get railroaded on just about everything, not just this stupid thing about paying off a stripper, but like the classified documents thing, getting his home raided. Because, looking for classified documents, you got to look at Melania's freaking underwear drawer too, apparently.
Yeah, like the whole, I got you with the Trump argument, and I think that the big picture is that something like that, where it wasn't even that whether he paid off a stripper or not. He fully admitted that he paid off a stripper. The problem is that the government's going after him because he didn't report it the right way. There's no doubt that there was money that exchanged hands and that was supposed to exchange hands. He signed her into a non-disclosure agreement. There was money there for that. He paid her off so she would shut her mouth. And this happens all the time in big business, all the time, right? But apparently they're saying he didn't report it the right way. Now, here's where the two sort of
a paperwork error.
Yeah, it's a paperwork error, and I'm sure that it wasn't Trump that was paying attention to all this. He's got people under him to do it because he doesn't have time to deal with this. Okay. Anyway, what the connection here is that people see this and they see these politically motivated juries and these politically motivated investigations, and it makes them not trust the justice system. And anybody that's really paid attention to the justice system closely should know not to trust it. But the average American who hasn't been tied up in the justice system because they just mind their own business and they don't do anything challenging and they've not been tied up in it for any reason, then they believe that it's a relatively good system. And compared to the rest of the world or a lot of parts of the world, it probably is. But it's not without its faults, and this brings its faults to the highlight. And we're talking about people's lives here. With Trump, we're going to be talking about money. We're going to be talking about embarrassment. We're going to be talking about credibility. We're going to be talking about his sort of how he presents himself and how people see him. But with this guy, Down in Austin, we're talking about his life. He's spending time in jail. We're talking about his military career. We're talking about his ability to work in the future. There's very few places you can work that won't give you a background check. And if you've got a conviction on your background like that, very highly likelihood you're not going to be working there, regardless of how good of a person is or what the details of the situation is. No one's going to hire him, even if they're familiar with the case and think he got railroaded, because of the liability aspect of it. So these are real people's lives they're dealing with. I think the thing is that someone like Trump brings it to the forefront, and everybody says, oh, if it could happen to him, could it happen to me? And yes, it can happen to you. And this stuff happens all the time. And we have to get politics out of the jury. And I think Brent absolutely hit the nail on the head with this when he said that if the police aren't willing to charge, when they initially look at this investigation, how can anybody else pick it up and decide that they want to charge and then end up with the conviction? Well, they did in this case. And I can think of another case in Texas where this just happened as well. And it was the whole thing was caught on video. It was probably even more of a self-defense situation, but there was a father and a son that one had a handgun. The son had a 12-gauge shotgun. Guy comes after him with a baseball bat. The father shoots the guy with the handgun. The son levels a 12-gauge shotgun and opens his head up, and it's over. Cops refused to charge. A lot of political pressure from around the country on it because it was caught on tape. They end up sending it, going, hey, we're going to charge it and let a jury figure it out. And at the end of the day, the jury convicted the father and didn't convict the son. And it was all based on the words that were exchanged between the two and the state of mind of the father at the time, because the father had, in some people's opinions, and yeah, you can probably look this up. It's called like the dumpster defenders, the mattress duo, this whole thing. You can see the video. It's out there. It's an interesting one. It's an interesting case. But they got the father because the father was essentially taunting the guy by the choice of the words that he chose to use. And I think about this myself. I mean, I'm always thinking about maybe being in a use of force situation in a parking lot in your home or whatever. And the fact that you could be warning someone by saying, I don't think you should do that. I doubt you should do that. Okay, go ahead and try it and see what happens. The moment that I said, go ahead and try it and see what happens, that's the equivalent of what that man was convicted over. Even though the other person was coming after him with the baseball bat in Texas. So is that poor jury instruction? Is that poor defense? Where's the justice in all this? I think that these are things that we have to look at. And my point is that it seems to happen all the time. A lot of these cases we're not privy to, but now that stuff's starting to happen on camera, and I believe this incident was on camera. And we probably need to talk about the details of what happened in the incident. I'm not real spun up on it, but guy was, like Brent said, an Uber driver. Another dude had like some type of AK variant. He was like an Antifa protester type. And the Uber driver felt threatened by the AK. The Uber driver said that the AK was pointed at him. The witnesses that were fellow protesters said, no, it wasn't. Dude with the AK gets shot. Uber driver lives. But here we are with a conviction on the Uber driver.
It'd be interesting to know, and I doubt that we would ever know, is if that DA down there in Austin was coerced somehow to press charges from an outside entity with a lot of money, AKA Soros-backed money. And it just shows, I think a lot of these DAs, these Commonwealth attorneys, and I don't want to politicize it by saying left, but they're influenced from outside sources and not driven by the Constitution and what is right. Washington State, aside from this incident, Washington State's a good example. Their new implementation of the assault weapons ban goes against everything that the Supreme Court has said right now. But they still go forward with these kind of cases, whether it's gun control or self-defense cases. They all go against the Constitution, because I believe that they're being influenced and driven in that direction by Soros type backed money and other influences.
I want to mention something I saw in the comment section because it talked about this. And I remember reading it. So I guess some of like the powerful evidence that the jury took to convict this guy was, text message correspondence between him and another guy, and him saying like, "Oh, I might have to shoot a protester today because the rioting and the protesting was going on, in the area that he worked." So they used those text messages between him and his friend against him at trial. So just food for thought, guys, because I mean, we can think back to 2020, and I'm sure that those of us in this group said something very similar to that at some point during all that craziness. Because I mean, us as armed prepared citizens, we carry everywhere we go. And, you better bet your ass if you make the wrong turn, you end up in the middle of one of these, mob situations. Any one of us are going to use deadly force to defend ourselves. And so, I can't help but think that that's what happened with this guy, with his text correspondence between him and his friend. And they ended up using it against him at trial. And I just want to remind everybody, because everybody hears Texas, like this happened in Texas. Austin is not Texas. It is like San Francisco rebirth here in Texas. It's terrible, guys. It's absolutely ridiculous. Austin was one of the ones that wanted to disband their police department. So our governor at the time pretty much said, like, hey, if you disband your police departments, you are not getting any state funding. And the left, that's all they love is money. So that type of rhetoric typically works with them.
Yeah, Austin is so bad that Austin has been bad. Austin's been bad for the 25 years I've been in Texas. Austin is so bad that Texas has had to create laws to reel Austin's prosecutors in. Years ago, Texas had a clause known as traveling clause. And basically it just meant that you could carry a firearm in your car without a license to carry, or at that time, what was called a concealed handgun license. Now, this made sense because let's say that you were training to get your concealed handgun license as a responsible gun owner. How are you going to transport that gun from your house to the gun range? Well, Austin cops were literally pulling people over, and when they found them legally traveling with that firearm, they would arrest them anyway and say, just arrest them. We know they're not breaking the law, but we're going to arrest them anyway and let them fight it out in the courts. And so the Austin PD was doing this to people who were completely legally had a firearm in their car. What ended up having to happen is it got so bad that the state government had to get together, which gets together once every 2 years to create laws in Texas. They had to create a law to clarify traveling, to make sure that no one was getting pulled over for it. And they ended up basically doing it by making it less ambiguous, making it more clear as to what someone could be basically arrested for in terms of carrying a firearm. And it's gotten more clear since then. But this all stems from Austin. And it comes down, it's just like the Second Amendment here. Our founding fathers wrote the Second Amendment. I don't know how it could be more clear, but you've still got people in this country and you've got states in this country that will reinterpret that Second Amendment to the point that you don't have Second Amendment rights. They'll literally argue that some people argue it only has to do with flintlock firearms and stuff that was only available in the 1780s. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's a perversion of our law, but unfortunately, that's where we are. People will push the envelope absolutely as far as they can, and if there's zero repercussions for them doing it, and even in Texas, there's no repercussions. Those prosecutors, those police officers, they didn't face jail time. They should be in jail right now thinking about what they did. They didn't face jail time. They were completely untouchable when they were arresting people for not breaking any laws at all and just letting them spend time in jail and letting them get tied up with all these legal fees and trying to get their farm back and all the nightmare being thrown into the justice system. That's Austin, Texas for you. And there's other places in America like that too.
What you guys got?
That was a great rant, Bruce. Kind of left me speechless. Well,
And I'll go back there. At some point, there has to be some accountability to the state governments, to the DAs, the Commonwealth attorneys, for prosecuting or attempting to prosecute these cases. I don't know where that would start, where that would go, but there has to be some kind of consequence, accountability for these guys, to make this absurdity stop like that, because it's getting more and more common every day.
Yeah, I don't know if it could be done, but like you hear about these sanctuary cities where they refuse to cooperate with the feds when they ask for information about people. Like, isn't that technically interfering with an investigation or something? Isn't that a crime?
That I don't know. I mean,
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer and I don't play one on TV either.
Right. You're pitting a state government against the federal government at that point. So I don't know what that answer is.
Now, I wanted to point out this guy's comment here. He's talking about the Second Amendment. It could have been written better. Well, I think if you go back in those times and given what the situation was at the time, like, to them, like, you can't fuck this up, right? This is clearly as clear as day. Like, the people are the militia. Like, so, for people to, like, nowadays or, freaking hundreds of years later, looking back at something and saying, oh, it could have been written better. Well, no, at the time it was just common knowledge. Everybody was the militia, so.
Yeah. And this has already been clarified by even the Supreme Court recently, and people still act like they don't know what the Supreme Court is saying. They will still pass laws in states and in communities knowing full well that the Supreme Court, in addition to the Second Amendment, has said this is what this law means, and just say, you know what, we don't care. We'll take somebody's rights away for 2, 3, 4 years until it reaches the Supreme Court. Then the Supreme Court slaps us down again. And you know what? Those people don't get those 3 or 4 years back of their rights. And there's zero repercussions. Do we drag those politicians out by their throats and hang them up from a lamppost? Nope. Nothing happens to them. They go to work the next day just like they never violated your rights in the first place. And that's the problem, is there's zero accountability. And I'm with you guys on the theory that rights are God-given and that the Second Amendment or the Constitution is simply an outline. But until God himself comes down and parts the country and starts straightening out this country, as long as he's giving us, the people, free will and just sitting back and going, let's see what happens here. Well, that doesn't really mean a whole lot, right? It doesn't help us at all. He's not getting that guy out of jail, right? He's not coming down and issuing justice for everybody while they're here on this earth, living their lives today. And that could change tomorrow. I mean, as a religious guy, I understand that could change tomorrow. But up until this point, there have been people that live their entire lives that have been abused by the justice system, that have had their rights abused, and the Lord did not seem to intervene on their behalf.
Hey, welcome, Stoker. Highlighting his comment, he says, Carlin said it best, garbage in, garbage out. DAs in Texas are voted by the people, 100%. And, unfortunately, guys, I think we have a tendency of, I see this all the time on the news. Like, the people are getting tired of X, Y, Z. The people this, people that. We're going to rise up. The people. No. So Lori Lightfoot got voted out, right? And I just see all these things as like, oh, the tides are turning. Lori Lightfoot was voted out by the people because they're fed up with crime. What'd they do? They replaced her with a more liberal freaking candidate. So we just got to face the reality that half the country is leftist. And half the country hates the Second Amendment. And you know, we got tough times ahead of us, guys. And I don't know how this is all going to pan out. And,
You know, a lot of it is from the local level on up, they just keep saying, well, they just want to pass it on to the next higher level because they don't want to deal with it themselves. You know, from the police agency to the Commonwealth attorney to the state level to the federal level, they just keep passing it off with no regard to somebody's personal rights, to their constitutional rights, because they don't want to deal with it themselves. They just want to pass that off.
No, you're spot on there, Jared.
I agree, and I think the reason for that, for some of that, is money. There's a lot of people whose jobs, careers, lives depend on these cases coming to court. A lot of money changes hands every time somebody's tried, particularly when it comes to attorneys and lawyers, right? I mean, I always think of this like think of the DEA. We'll just pick on the DEA tonight, okay? Got the DEA. How many DEA members do you think really want to win the war on drugs tomorrow? If there were no drugs in this country whatsoever, why would we need them? They'd be out of a job, be out on their butts. It's in their best interest to keep drugs moving and coming and going in the country because some of them have built a whole lifetime career over that. You could say this about militaries. If there were no wars in the country, why would you need a military, right? Eventually someone would go, man, we've been paying for this military for 40 years and there's never been a war. We don't need them anymore. Let's just defund the military and use that money somewhere else. And there's people's careers and lives that depend on that. Attorneys are no different. It's in their best interest to have cases get passed around throughout the courts, because every time a case goes from one court to another or gets kicked up a level, that's a whole nother level of money that starts changing hands. And I know in this country that we may be one of the lesser corrupt countries compared to some that are out there, but wheels still get greased in this country.
Yeah, I think one of the best examples, Bruce, of what you're talking about is something I saw on the Joe Rogan podcast, I think a couple of years ago. But he's talking about like the people in like San Francisco that are in charge with like cleaning up the homeless problem, right? They're making like 6-figure plus salaries, and you know, the homelessness is their problem that they're tasked with fixing. Well, what is their incentive to fix it when they're making like these, you know, possibly double-digit salaries? It's like, if I fix the problem, my double-digit salary, you know, 6-figure salaries go away. You know, so it's like, why fix the
They're
problem?
just a figurehead.
Yeah, just let it keep going, and that way I keep making all my grand money, and you know, so.
Yeah, and the worse it gets, the argument is we need more enforcers. Right? The worse the homeless problem is, every single time the government goes, well, it's because we're underfunded. We need more people to go out and deal with the homeless people. It's a giant racket, man. It's a giant racket. But we have nobody to blame but ourselves, because we, the people, we continue to fund it. We could go in at any time and shut down any one of those and simply all band together and vote and say, we're not funding this anymore. It's over with, right? And then it would be over with. This is sort of some of the idea behind the whole defund the police movement, which I don't agree with. But some people started saying, well, we don't like what they're doing, so let's just take the money away. And then they go away. Yes, they go away. And then you see what happens, which is not what you want to happen in this case. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't have police. I'm not saying we shouldn't have people that clean up homeless camps. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have prosecutors. We should. That's fundamental to our country. But we could definitely use with some reform and cleaning some things up, streamlining some things, and focusing on justice and not money. I just think it's gotten to be too much on money. And when it comes to these DAs, this is a political position, guys. DAs they're politicians, okay? They've got a higher, there's someplace that they're going beyond being a DA. So many of DAs you see out there, they end up being politicians, and that's very telling, I think.
Well, name the number of politicians in Congress that aren't lawyers. There's a few, but not many. And the reason they probably go to Congress is two reasons: as lawyers. One, they're bored, or two, they suck as lawyers. Because any good lawyer, it has no cash flow troubles. Also, on that thing of politicians, look how long they stay there. Look how long Feinstein's been there. Pelosi, McConnell, Schumer. And the reason they're there is they literally could not survive in the real world.
You can't prime out for shoehorn. Once they get in, they're going to do whatever it takes for them to do to stay in.
Yeah.
I just saw something on the news this morning about Feinstein. I guess she's like missed like 75% or 80% of the votes or something like that. And she's like 90 years old and still occupying the seat. So, you know, you have like some of these younger Democrats that are like trying to get her to get out because she's costing them on
Didn't
votes.
she say she resigned and rescinded her resignation or something like that?
Say that again?
Didn't she resign and then a day or so later she said, no, I didn't resign?
No, her staff said she wasn't running for re-election. And then she was like, no, I never said that.
Okay. I couldn't remember what it was.
I mean, she probably couldn't either.
Probably not.
There ought to be a thing, though. We should have a law that, like, oh, you're missing 90% of your votes. Boom, you're automatically out of office.
Yeah, because I mean, what are you collecting a paycheck for?
Yeah,
You
you're
know,
not
what are you
doing
doing?
people's work.
That's what you're supposed to be doing, is representing your, you know, constituents, and you're not even doing that. So it's like, why should you get paid? Yeah, I mean, I don't know the rules in and out of, you know, Congress, but you would think that there's a bar that needs to get met. Like, you have to be present so many days. You have to be present for so many votes. God, that just seems ridiculous.
Being an elected official, I'm sure there would have to be some kind of a process to have them removed.
What's crazy is you get people like her that have just been in office for decades upon decades, and you just can't get them out. And it's like, how the hell, like, who's voting for them? It's crazy.
Well, that's because of the polarization. Because look at this. We're all pro 2A. Well, there's one party that doesn't want us. So we have to go to the other party to get our voice heard. You know, and whether that other party has other things we agree or disagree with, when that guy's up for re-election, the person running against him is going to be opposite of what you want. So, you know, it's what you're passionate about, because everybody has a passionate issue. We may be passionate about 2A, but the environmentalists are passionate, and the ones about, you know, racism are passionate, and the ones that are about their little farm subsidy are passionate, and the list could go on and on. But people are going to single issue vote. You know, the person who's pro-life is not going to care anything else that candidate does if they're pro-life. And just pick pro anything.
And I'm somewhat guilty of that too. I've become more and more of a single issue voter. I won't go into too many details of that, but the Second Amendment is my bread and butter. It has been for 20 years. And if I've got someone that's an absolute piece of trash dirtbag, and he's running on a pro 2A ticket, he's got my vote. I mean, what else am I going to do, right? I mean, that's something that I'm focused on. So, and I think the other thing is this: when you've got somebody that's been a career politician for 20 years, they have a tremendous infrastructure built for their reelection. And if you're a small fry and you go, oh, I think I'll run against Pelosi, or I think I'll run against whomever, because I can better represent a younger view of the views. I can't do that with the money in my pocket. I'm going to have millions of dollars to run against her, to run against Feinstein. And I'm going to be learning everything for the first time as I go through it. She's got a team of 20-year veterans that understand how to run elections and re-elections. So very difficult to overthrow somebody that's been in that position that long.
Oh, absolutely. And it's kind of explains why Trump is popular, because you know who Trump is. He can self-fund to a little bit till he can get popular, you know, and he can drive that forward, you know. And you're right, Bruce, the little guy isn't going to do it. The only time the little guy wins is when the big guy doesn't pay attention. Now, there was a case, I think it was 2014, our guy here in Virginia, who was like the minority leader in the House, got beat by some school teacher who, like, I think total expenditure on his campaign was like $5,000. You know, it's just because the guy wasn't paying attention to what was going on. But that's a fluke, and that doesn't happen often.
What I do love about these career politicians, though, is that they're in office for so long that you get actual video representation of their positions changing over the years. I was watching this video the other day, and it was Biden, and he's like talking about like gay marriage and being opposed to it, and then like the borders being wide open. And that stuff needs to be done about it. You know, all this stuff that, you know, nowadays is just complete 180, complete opposite. So I just find that hilarious. And then
show that they go wherever they're going to get the votes.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have a particular view on it. All they want is votes, and they're stemming for those votes is all it is.
That's exactly right. And that's Trump too, right? I mean, what did we see come out this weekend? Was the DeSantis PAC ran a commercial, an anti-Trump commercial, pointing out his hypocrisy on the Second Amendment, where he's talking about banning assault weapons, banning bump stocks, people not having the right to keep and bear arms, and all of this stuff. And it's just exactly what you expect. It's a collage of things that he said for probably the last 20 years, maybe 30 years, put all together. And then it shows him standing up in front of the NRA, which strangely isn't really our best friend when it comes to defending our gun rights either. And DeSantis is PAC's flat out calling out his anti-Second Amendment stances and how he's essentially a flip-flopper. Now, I don't know if I don't know exactly where DeSantis stands on gun rights. I'm holding my cards close to my chest until I find out, because I'm not sure what kind of history he's got there. I do know that he just pushed and passed unlicensed carry in the state of Florida. I think that's just went through, and that was because of him. So that's a hell of a move. But here's the thing: do we really think that he would be doing it, working just as hard, if he wasn't planning on having future political ambitions? Probably not. And do we really think Trump cares one way or another about gun rights? His whole life, he's had an entourage of security around him. He's never needed to own a firearm, okay, for personal defense. He's never walked down a street at night. He's never walked out of a Walmart or a gas station and saw some shady figures on the way to his car and wondered if they were going to make a move. He's not in touch of reality with that because of the lifestyle that he lives. He's just now decided he's going to be the pro Second Amendment guy and go to the NRA convention because it's the trendy thing for him to do. And he needs the votes from guys like me that support gun rights. He could completely flip the other way tomorrow if the polls said that he needed to be an anti-gunner again. And most politicians are like this. They have no moral compass. They just go whichever the way the wind blows that they feel that they can win elections off of.
You know, he's also the one that said that let's take their guns and then give them due process after the fact for red flag laws.
Right. And that's not just a gun issue, but when that's your view of our rights of, hey, let's just consider them guilty until they can prove that they're innocent. That's pretty damn anti-American, if you ask me.
Exactly.
Yeah,
you know, who's in recent history, the only president that hasn't had a real stance on gun rights was Obama. He did absolutely nothing anti-gun that I can remember. I don't remember him doing a single thing, and everybody was scared.
We talked about this before. I think the only thing that he had credited was a ban of ammunition. Maybe it was the AK-74 round. I think that happened under his watch.
I think that's a convoluted argument, though. Like, we've had this conversation before.
Yeah, we have.
You can rest your ass. If he had the capability of doing it, he would have done it. I mean, we're talking post Sandy Hook. They wanted.
Well, yeah, I'm not disagreeing.
Oh, I agree with you, Brent. They wanted it. Obama, I don't think he gave a shit about guns.
I don't think he cared either. No.
Yeah, it was low hanging fruit. The party said he had to go out and say a few things because all during his 2 terms, the gun control was the only thing he didn't get. Anything else he wanted, he got. And I just don't think he gave a shit about it. Mm-hmm.
One other thing I'll bring up, because this has been going through the chat now, and guys, believe it or not, I'm watching the chat. And first of all, let me thank you all for being on your best manners and behavior tonight. I've not had many comments blocked by YouTube, so you're keeping your language clean. Keep in mind, we almost never block anybody. If your comment's not showing up and you said a dirty word, it's because YouTube blocked it. It's not us. We want you guys to be able to speak your mind, but you have to keep it clean to get your point across. And you guys have been doing that tonight. But one of the common threads that I'm seeing here are where we're kind of talking about back to the Second Amendment and the meaning of the Second Amendment. And I want to put my 2 cents worth in here, because you guys seem to be arguing about how well or poorly written it was and why the whole term militia was even in there. And it's always been my view. We have to get back and think about what was the Second Amendment about and what was it not about. It was not about hunting. It was not about providing for your family. It was not about going out and shooting dove or geese or ducks or deer hunting. It was not about any of that. Okay. It was not about personal defense. It was not about protecting yourself if someone broke into your house at night. It was about forming a paramilitary unit to go after corrupt governments, tyrannical governments, all and any tyrannical governments, not excluding your own, just like we did before the Constitution was written, when we sent that little letter to King George saying we no longer care to participate in your form of government. That's the reason that there's militaristic wording in there, like being part of a militia. And at the time that was being argued, it was being discussed, the question was asked, what is a militia? And that was put out clearly, basically meaning at that time, any man of fighting age, i.e. that could be militarized and could be rounded up together, form a group, and go out and fight tyranny. Now, there are some arguments that can be made that excluded blacks, that excluded women. But I'm not sure that we're going to make those arguments today. I think we're at a point that we are more inclusive, and we're like, hey, it applies to everybody. And we're not going to age discriminate either. There's a minimum age, it seems to be, in a lot of states in terms of how old you have to be a firearm, but there's not a maximum age, although there was a maximum age roughly to serve in a militia or in the military back at the time. So we've grown those rights a little bit. We haven't shrunk those rights in terms of inclusiveness. Here I am. I got my DEI training, man. I'm freshly brushed up on it. But I think that's the reason that the militaristic side is in there. They weren't really thinking of it like we somewhat do today, that, hey, I'm walking out of Walmart and I might need a handgun on my side to protect me. Those weren't really the way things went down back then. It was more the bigger picture that we must protect our freedoms. And the way that we can do that is not completely dependent on a standing military, which we didn't have when we broke away from the King of England in the beginning. But we have to be all volunteers, be able to come together and defend ourselves whenever tyranny rears its head, whether it's in a small community or it's throughout the entire country. That's my 2 cents on it. What do you guys think?
Great rant, Bruce. Really, I can't add to that, man. You kind of nailed it across the board there. Well, just to go a little off track on militias and stuff, I think one of the problems with militias today is to give the left credit. They've managed to make that a very dirty word, just like the word patriot, which is sad, because you say those 2 words and connect them to someone's name, and they're automatically a right-wing, militant, anti-government overthrow person, when that's usually not the choice. And I think one of the things that would go a long way to rehabilitating those terms would be if our sheriffs would use their constitutional duties and call out their militias from time to time. Like when we have lost kids in the woods, or we have a big event in the area, or they just need extra reinforcement. Call out your militia. You have the right to do it as a sheriff. They should do it. And I bet you could probably say that hasn't happened in the last century.
Well, Doc,
Virginia here has the Virginia Defense Force that they never use for anything like that.
Yeah, it's basically a ham radio club now.
Pretty much, yeah.
Doc's mentioned a few times on these live streams about how the state of Missouri used the Missouri militia during, I think it was like a hurricane or thunderstorm.
Yeah, they had a tornado literally hit the state house.
So,
You know, a lot of the sheriff's offices down here have reserve officers. Excuse me, and that's what they use for their so-called militia. You know, it might be a step further or a step above a militia, but they have a lot of reserve officers that they don't pay. They're volunteers. They're retired officers and deputies that want to maintain their DCJS certification. So they have the reserve status.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up before I forget. I saw a couple comments going back to some of the gun things that Obama did, and I do think it's important to note because they did mention it. So he also banned the importation of Russian-made rifles into the country. If you guys remember, he also banned the weapons that we had like sold off, like your M1 Garands, M1 carbines, from coming back. So there was that as well.
Technically not true. You can import M1 Garands, M1 carbines. I know, I do it. Except the difference is you have to have a letter from the State Department. They added a layer of bureaucracy. They just didn't ban it. So it can be done. And recently, Royal Tiger just brought in hundreds of M1 carbines back from Ethiopia. It can be done. They just made it more bureaucratic. The silly thing that they've done is they've just added more and more regulation. You can bring things in. It's just how many hoops are you willing to jump through?
I'm going to take issue with your comment. You just said, I know I do it. You've been holding out on us, Les. Why haven't I been getting text messages saying, hey, I just imported a whole bunch of M1 carbines. How many you
Where's
want?
all that, Les?
What a piece of shit, man. That's messed up.
Hey, they're my clients, man. And they bought it. They get to get the stuff. I'm not sourcing it. I'm just the freight forwarder.
1 or 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 can't fall out of the crate as they come in.
Remember what I just said about greasing those wheels, Les? You need to take notes.
What, you're implying that I'm corrupt, Bruce? Seriously?
Yeah, so chewing bubblegum said, didn't Obama ban importation of Russian AKs? That's what Brent just said. Trump also did that. So my understanding is that Obama banned it based on factories. And you've got factories like Tula, like Ishmash. And I believe that Trump came in and found out, oops, Molat was left off the list. So they added Molat back to the list, or Trump did that. So they have been using that as sort of a, let's stop Russia from, let's put sanctions on Russia. And then and this is where I kind of take issue with that, with the whole Russian thing. And the Chinese thing before that, they did it with China too under Bill Clinton, right? The 1992, 1993 assault weapons ban. They stopped importation. That's where you get things like Mac 90s, et cetera, where they were they couldn't bring them in military configuration, had to be a sporter configuration. Thumbhole stocks went on, bayonet lugs came off, and then eventually they were stopped altogether importing those from China. The idea is that China's a bad country, Russia's a bad country. We're not going to give them money anymore, so we're going to stop their exportation or our importation of their weapons in. Here's the problem that I have with that. If you're really pro-American, what do I care if what country I'm getting weapons from? If Nazi Germany wants to send me a whole bunch of weapons, yes, then bad. Why wouldn't we take those weapons to help arm fellow Americans and help defend freedom? That's where I kind of take issue. I'm all about looking at bad actors and saying, hey, let's sanction them. But when you're looking at weapons sales, they're so small, they're so minuscule. I think that's something there should be I personally think it should be an exception made for. We should take as many of the guns that they'll give us that we can get from them at cheap prices, because it helps Americans more than not taking them would hurt the bad actor. That's just my opinion. I don't know what you guys think about that.
Just real quick for clarification, was it under Clinton's assault weapon ban, or was that Bush Sr. that?
Bush Sr. It's the 1989 import ban that forbids you from bringing in assault-style rifles, and they keep adding things onto that to either make it more bureaucratic or flat out ban something.
But I believe it was under Clinton that did the flat out ban. Because remember, you could get Mac 90s. You could get them in.
You could get them up to about 95 or 96.
Yeah, and then boom, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's a China thing because you can buy the Arsenal equivalent. It's the exact same thing. You can make the argument the Arsenal one's better quality. Whatever.
Right. Yeah. There's always ways around, right? Or Bulgaria. I've got a Bulgarian 74 that's Russian made that's been restamped. So well, that's an interesting one too. Like where there's money to be made, right? There's a will, there's a way. I was watching a video from an Australian guy named Perun, Prun. Not to get too far off topic, but if you guys are interested in what's going on in Ukraine, man, he's fantastic at doing big overviews of that stuff. But he's basically explaining how the same thing's happening with oil. That if you ban oil from Russia, then there's no longer a Russian ship pulling up in the port at Corpus Christi, Texas, unloading oil. But that ship went out to sea somewhere, it changed flags, it got offloaded, it went to another country, that oil got mixed together, and all of a sudden now you've got a Greek ship or some other ship showing up in Corpus Christi with under a different flag, and we're still getting that oil. There's ways around this thing. It makes it more difficult for them. But again, where there's a will, there's a way, where there's money to be made. And that's what was going on with some of those Bulgarian AKs that were clearly Russian made there for a while.
Yeah, and now look how the Americans respond. Now you're starting to have American-made AKs, and despite the rumor, some of them are pretty good. Yeah, some are garbage. But let's be honest, a Norinco AK is garbage. I own several AKs. I bought a Norinco one when I came back from Desert Storm for the whole fact my government said I couldn't bring a real AK back as a war trophy. And that thing's garbage. And all my other AKs are better, including my PSA one. Everybody goes, oh, PSA. That's a great AK. It's the best one I have. Runs reliably. It fits well. The Norinco thing's a piece of shit. The only thing I will give it credit for is no matter what type of magazine you have, it will work in it.
Yeah, I mean, there's Americans are ingenious when it comes to working ways around issues like that. I mean, the BATF there for a while said, you have to chop receivers. And he said, oh, we're going to make you chop barrels too. Well, that just boosted the barrel market in the U.S. And now you can buy a U.S.-made Cold Hammer Forged Chrome Line AK barrel built to spec. That's better than some of the other Comblock barrels that are even out there. That was unheard of 15 years ago. But it's only happened because of necessity, because people still want them. The problem with all of this, and here's maybe I wasn't clear on this. The problem with all of this is that it brings up the cost of the base weapon. And because it brings up the cost of the base weapon, it denies lower income Americans accessibility to those weapons. It's just like a ban on machine guns, right? They said, we're not banning machine guns. We're just going to ban the new manufacturer of machine guns. And all the boomers and all the FUDs go, oh, that's fine. I've got mine. I've got my $1,000 Colt M16 in 1983. What do I care? I've got one. It's fine. Well, fast forward now, that's a $30,000 machine gun. And if you're a new gun owner and you're 20 years old, 21 years old, and it could be argued that if you're a minority gun owner, i.e. a black or brown person, and you're already in a lower bracket of income, that's inaccessible to you. You can't obtain that. So the government has effectively banned you due to your financial situation from owning that firearm. It's an end around way of doing it. And the same things happen with things just like AKs. Can I buy an AK parts kit, bring it in? Sure. Now I've got to buy a US made receiver. Now I've got to buy a US made barrel. Now I've got to pay somebody to assemble it for me. Now I've got to have it refinished. I'm looking at probably $2,000 to $3,000 on something that should be, if it was imported straight from China still today, probably a $700, $800 gun.
Yeah, but
that's where they're messing with people.
Yeah, but look on the other hand, Bruce, you can buy an AR today, half the price than we could get it in the 90s. And I'll make the statement that what you buy, the cheap PSA AR you buy for $450 is better than anything we could buy in 1995.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that because of the popularity because of how the popularity boom after the assault weapons ban, the AR-15
and the advance in technology.
Yeah, and technology, and the more people you have making stuff, the better they get at it, and then the cost can come down. That's very true.
Well, because look at it, just look in advance in technology. To be a national match rifle, be it an M16 or M14, it has to shoot 2 MOA. To be acceptable for military service, NATO standard is 4 MOA, regardless of the weapon system. If you went out and bought a cheap AR right now, not picking on PSA, but they are the low budget one right now, you buy that or an Anderson pony gun, and that thing shot 4 MOA, you'd throw it away. You'd be pissed off because you can go buy the cheapest AR out there. It'll still shoot 2 MOA if you put anything other than garbage in it for ammo.
Yeah,
Yeah,
don't
let's just
disagree
give-
with that.
I do want to give credit to PSA. I mean, in terms of like companies that have like really made AR-15 platforms accessible to the common man. I mean, I don't think there's a better company out there that's done that. I mean, the shit they're doing now about, you know, I know Bruce appreciates this. I sure as hell do. All the clones that they're coming out with. Like, I got my fucking AK Spiker. I almost came to the conclusion that I was never going to own an AK Spiker because of the outrageous price they go for nowadays. You know, to get the original Norinco ones or whatever the case may be, like they're expensive as hell. And I was like, no, I guess that's a gun I'm never going to buy because I'm not going to spend that kind of money for a freaking Chinese AK. And then the PSA came out with their AK Spiker clone. And I'm like, that's good enough, man. I can put that in my buddy Ken's hands in a Vietnam flick, and it's going to look legit.
Yeah. You know,
yeah, and they got the H&R M16s that they're working on now. That's going to be, in collaboration with Nodak Spud. That's gonna all work out just fine. Bringing those companies together and coming out with that product, giving somebody for the first time really a Vietnam era M16 with fairly correct and accurate markings to the Vietnam era gun because of H&R's situation there. So it's on my short list. Listen, when they come out, I'm going to have one just to say I've got one, whether it's junk or great. I don't know. I expect good things out of it, but I'm going to have to have one. And, the good thing about PSA is PSA's had some growing pains. Everybody knows that, right? And PSA's had some issues, but they seem to be really working hard to get through them constantly. Yep. And stuff seems to get better and better. And where they cut corners in the beginning and everybody raises hell about it, they seem to start coming back around and going, okay, let's stop cutting those corners and let's start doing things better and provide more quality, more durability. And you can see that in the generation of guns that they've got. And when it comes to AR-15s, guys, I mean, the United States is pretty well, in the civilian side of the United States is pretty well got those tweaked and worked out like Les was saying. So I expect to see whatever's coming out of H&R to be absolutely fine on their retro line of guns.
Yeah.
A lot of the technology has come so far to be able to clone so many of these weapon platforms. And it also, I don't remember when they started, but it also depends on your engineers and your CNC machinists and the people that you have employed. That makes a huge difference in making quality parts and in firearms like that.
Yeah. And, to speak to PSA's quality, look at One Shepherd. Yeah, we're only firing blanks, but when those guns are out in the field, those things get beat to shit. And it's rare when we have a gun go down at One Shepherd. The two last guns that went down I find unique is because one guy fell on a rock and shattered his Magpul handguard. So it's like, how the fuck did you manage to do that? And the other one was somebody fell and bent a receiver extension tube for the collapsible stock. Again, probably in the middle of the night, tripped and fell on a rock. I think both anybody with any common sense would recognize those as very outlier incidents. And it speaks well of the guns because they keep running and chugging.
You're always going to get things that happen. Shit happens.
Yeah.
One Shepherd is a great example of putting weapons through the ringer, because I mean it's in terms of trying to relate to actual military training. Like one shepherd is as close as you're going to get. You got dudes going out there for, a week straight at a training semester in the bush, treating those weapons essentially like infantrymen, right? They're banging up against logs and hitting the ground, doing fire team rushes and all kinds of stuff. And being out in the elements for 24/7 during the FTX, and they're holding up. I do got a super chat I have to address real quick, and I appreciate you, buddy. Thank you for your contribution. It says Brent, bit off topic, sorry, but who makes the watch cover and all your gear videos? I can't find it with the elastic cover like yours. Thanks. So that is actually a watch cover I got as like a child. I think my parents bought it for me at a surplus store, like fucking hell, it would be like 35 years ago, plus. So yeah, I have no clue, man. I don't know where you can find that. So sorry. I know it's not the answer that you were looking for, but also on PSA, since we're on PSA's nuts right now, I just wanted to mention that I bought an AR-10, and for just a little over $1,000, I got an AR-10 and 7 magazines, 7 Magpul 20-round magazines to go with it for just over $1,000. I mean, that's unreal. That's freaking unreal. So, I mean, and it seems like build quality. Now, granted, I haven't taken it out to the range and fired yet. I'm going to do that very soon, maybe tomorrow. But build quality seems pretty spot on. Like there's nothing that's like loose, manipulating it and, breaking it down and everything. Everything seems pretty legit. So, again, solid company that's, making shit available for the common man, which is just absolutely commendable. But is there another topic we can transition to? I think we've been beating on this one for a while.
Yeah, what do you guys want to talk about in the chat?
Yeah, you guys throw some suggestions out there, and if we're down for it, we'll pick it up. So
this is a little different format. I know Brent. I was surprised when I looked at our chat today, and he's like, "We're just going to let the viewers decide." So that's interesting.
Yeah, that's a big thing there. Arrow being run out, Zev will be run out, and a couple of the other Washington gun makers are going to get run out as well. There's not much you can do about that. The legislatures in Washington have decided that, hey, they don't want gun companies in their state. And this is not the first time this has happened. Hell, Maryland ran Beretta out, and at the time they did it, Beretta was the second largest employer in the state. So ideology will trump common sense. And if you're a business, you're going to be smart about that. When the state you're in is hostile to what you do, you got to make a decision. And I'm sure Arrow and Zev will make decisions based on that. It's just a matter of when they do it. And, that's a tough thing to do. I can tell you as a business owner, starting up a new office, moving an office, those are major complicated tasks, and I'm sure being in Washington, a manufacturer wants to move to another state. I'm sure the ATF will get right on giving you that new FFL. I'm sure they won't take months or years to give you the new one so you can go that great period of time without revenue. I'm sure that wouldn't happen.
Yeah, come on to Texas, bring your guns, not your politics. Keep that in mind. Don't come down here or to any other state that's more friendly to you and then keep voting the way you're doing up in Washington, because you're going to end up getting more of the same.
No, we haven't talked about Midnight Brutality yet. It was a great match, and I'll walk out on a limb and say it was groundbreaking, because while there have been night vision matches before, there's never been a night vision match like Midnight Brutality. We had people shooting from moving vehicles at night. We had people throwing kettlebells in the woods at night under nods. We had people doing complicated tasks like reading something up close, like a foot from you, and then engaging targets 100 meters out. We had people running an obstacle course while wearing nods and then making long distance shots. And then we had, for a short period of time, we had a shoot house until Mother Nature decided we didn't. But we had all kinds of challenging targets and challenging tasks. And we had stages that were 5 minutes long, and 75% of the people couldn't get it done in 5 minutes. They were that tough. There's never been anything like it before, and until there's another Midnight Brutality, I doubt there'll be anything like it until then.
I've got two to cover here. Maybe we can do this one and then go back to actually let's come back to this one. Let me answer this real quick. This guy says, Brent, do you have a weapon system resource for guys that want to spin up on common NATO systems before going to Ukraine? Yes. About 5 or 6 years ago, guys, I did an infantryman's guide where I went through a whole host of commonly used weapons. Now, to today's standards, it's it's changed. There's a lot more AR-15s out there in the world, but I went through a litany of very common weapons, AK platforms, bolt action guns, SKSs, all kinds of shit. I even covered like RPGs. You can go find that when YouTube went communist and started demonetizing, firearms related content. They essentially throttled it, and it never took off again from there. But if you go into my Infantryman's Guide playlist, you will find it in there. It's Infantryman's Guide, most commonly used enemy weapons, or something along those lines. So that's what I recommend to you. Again, it's a little dated, but it's still going to be a good reference for you. So back to the comment about the Chicom SKS. I'll throw my 2 cents, and I'm sure you guys got something to throw in too. SKS is a fun rifle. If that's all you have, it'll work. But in nowadays, when you can buy $400 or $500 AR-15s from PSA, for instance, AR-15, regardless of the company, is probably going to be a significantly better rifle, hands down.
Yeah, I agree completely. I own 3. Eventually, I want to have one from every country where they were made, maybe with the exception of East Germany, because they're rare as hen's teeth. But they're great rifles. Every time I shoot one, I enjoy it. It reminds me of sort of a 2/3 scale M1 Garand. I know that's blasphemy to some people, but it's a great rifle. It's not a great rifle for the cost today. Their value has went up so much that you literally can get an entry-level AR for the cost of a good quality SKS, whether it's from China or wherever. The Chinese ones are fine. The Chinese military ones with the threaded barrels are even better. But if you're looking to buy one from a kind of collector's perspective, and you just want one because you think they're cool, find yourself one that was imported into the United States that's got the threaded barrel, and you can study up on that, learn how to look at the barrel collars without taking them apart and seeing which one's threaded and which one's pinned. Try to find one that hasn't been bubbled up too much, and you'll be good to go. It'll be a great rifle. Budget yourself probably around $5 bills or so. But if you're looking for some type of personal defense type system, there's a lot of better options out there today than the SKS. It's dated and it's too expensive for what it is. And
you can get a like $300 primary arms optic and throw it on there, and that's another capability that your SKS does not have.
No, agreed. The SKS, when it was a great frontline self-defense weapon, is when you bought it for $100 and you could buy a 1,000-round case of ammo for $100. You haven't been able to do that since 94, 95. And right now you can buy a PSA AR. I hate to beat that drum again, but you can buy that for half the price of an SKS right now. And SKS and AR ammo is the same price. So that's a null argument.
Yeah, somebody said SKS is old. It's 2 years older than the AK-47.
Yep. Hey, on this super chat here about Eastern Oregon, Washington joining Idaho, I'm a big proponent of the Greater Idaho concept. Clearly, if you look at a map of Oregon and stuff, all the people that are voting left or Democrat are crowded in around Portland. It's just like the whole rest of the state is red, and they're clearly not getting represented. Same with Eastern Washington. And if they want to join Idaho, sure, why not? That's the will of the people. It seems that Eastern Washington and Eastern Oregon want to go to Idaho. Idaho seems to want them to come from the things I've seen. But let's look at the other side of this slope. If you keep doing this, and there's other states that would be interested in doing this too, the problem is we will get even more hyperpolarized. So you have to accept that with that deal. Now, I still think it's worthwhile doing, but I can point out like Maryland. There's a lot of places in Maryland would be interested in a deal like that. Because if you live in Western Maryland or Maryland's Eastern Shore, you have no representation, because anything that happens in Maryland is what Montgomery County pays for and what Baltimore votes for, and everybody else is completely irrelevant. I think it's a great idea, but I do believe it's a slippery slope that could lead to a place we don't want to go.
Same thing can happen here in Virginia too.
Yeah.
And there's the same talk of Texas always, right? Texas seceding from the union and going and doing our own thing. I think that the threat is very helpful. I think that the threat that a state could lose, or the nation in the case of Texas could lose a state, I think people had to keep in mind that the left and those that are those city urban areas, they only take as much as you give. Okay. They're not trying to get killed. They're not trying to get rolled over. They're not trying to get economically shut down. That they only take what you can give. And so the minute that you start really talking about breaking away from a state and going somewhere else, they're gonna dial it back. They're gonna dial it back. Politicians are trained, and they have got it down to a fine art in this country and in a lot of other countries too. You know, there's been times where you saw things like czars and chancellors and leaders and kings that took it too far, and they ended up with their head rolling across the ground and a bunch of angry people. They don't want to let that happen here, and they're really good at not letting that happen here. So what they do here is they take it right up to the point that people start to get too upset and start to really push back. Then they dial it back a little bit. They let it simmer for 10 years. They let people get used to that being the new norm. Then they turn it back up. It's happened my whole life in this country, and that's why our rights are always under attack. If they came out in 1790 and said, hey, we're going to instill all the interpretations of rights and freedoms and regulations and big government today in 1790 that they have now in 2023, the country would revolt and heads would roll. They couldn't possibly do it. They just do it slowly over a period of time, so that we're like that frog in the boiling water, slowly being heated up, and we just keep sitting there smiling like, okay, this isn't so bad. They're not taking too much from us.
Yeah, and there's actually, on the good side, there's a case where the secession thing actually worked. If you go back to 1981, the Florida Keys technically seceded from the Union. And what brought it about was there were so many Cuban and Haitian refugees coming in that the Border Patrol put a roadblock in at the bridge leading from mainland onto Key Largo. And what happened was that just killed tourism. And it was making it hard for even stuff to get through to the grocery stores and the Kmart and things like that. And people made a big deal out of it. They made an excellent media campaign that had relatives from all over the country calling down, oh my God, are you okay? Is there seceding? And it was a big media play. But what it did is it so focused attention on what was going on that the government removed the roadblock and found other ways to deal with the problem. And one of the other great things about it is it let the world know that, hey, this place called the Florida Keys is not just a wintertime resort area. It's open year round and actually had a good economic benefit. But, can you do that on a much larger scale? That's a question that remains to be answered.
Jared, I think you need to eat something, man. Your stomach's growling.
Yeah, getting a little hungry here, huh?
Well, one of the comments was compromising rights is for cowards. This is from a guy that has agreed to the YouTube terms of service and is posting on YouTube. I'm just picking on you because I know what you're saying, brother. I know what you're saying. And I'm with you. I hear you. We compromise on rights every single day. You don't work for an employer that you haven't agreed to given up some of your rights on. All right. Don't believe me? Just walk down your hallway shouting obscenities and see how long you have a job. You've agreed to curb your freedom of speech in order to be employed there, and many other things. Most people can't carry a gun at work. Most people can't get up on their soapbox during lunch break and shout about how great or terrible Trump is. There's a lot of things we give up and curb our rights on every single day voluntarily. So before we act like we're all a bunch of tough guys up here, let's look at ourselves and remember that the simple fact that we're on YouTube, we've already agreed to abide by YouTube's terms of service. And the moment that we don't, YouTube will just shut us down and throw us out.
I also want to say, in terms of like Texas succeeding and stuff, like I'm not convinced that it would go the way we, most of the people that want that would go, right? Like driving around. Now, granted, we live in North Texas, so it's not exactly like the reddest of the state, but it's not as red as it once was. We've had a lot of immigration. Now, granted, a lot of people that moved to Texas are, of the right mindset, and they fled here because they want to get away from that old mindset. But we've had a lot of my company has moved to Texas, therefore I'm moving my whole family to Texas, and I'm bringing my politics with me. We've had a lot of that. A lot of companies like Toyota and some other ones have came to Texas because they love all our flat out Republican ideas of less taxes on businesses here in Texas, and they've brought all their communists with them.
Yeah, and we, as Texas, welcome them. We're bringing the wolf into the hen house, right? If you look at any of our super red Republican governor's speeches, he's all about getting Toyota in here, right? Like we're more interested in the money, here we go, than we are freedoms. That's sort of the downfall to capitalism. We use that term. I'm going to use that term very loosely. I want you guys to we're talking about seceding or states breaking off or whatever. Keep in mind, we're only going to do what the federal government allows us to do as a state. Remember, you guys don't remember this. It was even before my time, but I'll tell you the story. Federal government came out for study and they decided we're going to have national speed limits. Speed limit's going to be 55. Pissed Sammy Hagar off. He wrote a song about it called I Can't Drive 55. This is way back before your time, back when TVs were black and white. But there were a few states down in the South that said, the heck with you. We're not doing 55. We're not going to do that. We want it to be 65 or 75 or whatever, or unlimited, whatever. We're not going to let you tell us what to do. And the Fed said, fine, you're not getting any highway funds. And within 10 years, every one of those states had capitulated, and there were 55 signs across the country. We will only do what the federal government allows us to do.
Yeah, and if you remember, what brought the drinking age up to 21 was Ronald Reagan going, if you don't raise the drinking age in your state, I don't give you highway funds. And he was literally applauded for it.
Money talks every time.
All right, what else we got? What's in the news? You guys, again, in the comment section, you can throw ideas out there. So what else is highlighting?
Although, on this Texas secession idea, it's a powerful weapon your governor has on the immigration issue. Because if he succeeds, he can close that border.
Well, what's the latest and greatest with the pistol brace? Anybody keeping up on that day in, day out?
Last I saw, it's not going through the courts as fast as we all thought it would. There are lawsuits out there. They just seem to be grinding slowly. It's questionable if they'll get done before the ban goes in effect.
So I'll make a prediction, and I'll put my money where my mouth is. I've submitted 5 pistol braces for approval. I believe that the law is going to go through. I don't believe that they're going to be able to overthrow it. I believe that all the hoopla and back and forth about it not becoming a law was just a bunch of hot air from a bunch of YouTube personalities that are out there just for the views, and that they're going to have misled many pistol brace owners and thinking just sit back and don't do anything. It's going to be overthrown in the courts. I don't know that it'll be overthrown in the courts. And I'm not, and I don't think that, I think that they're going to be banned, and that's going to be that. And people that didn't jump on board on this thing proactively back in January are going to be just SOL in terms of the SBRs and the pistol brace things. Now, I've got multiple tax stamps. So I've had security clearances. I've worked on military aircraft. So in terms of my information, they've got all my information that they could want. They've got everything that they need from me anyway. So for me, I don't have anything to hide in that respect. So for me, it's a great opportunity because it saved me $1,000. 5 tax stamps saved me $1,000 in taxes. I know that doesn't apply to all of you, and I know some of you are in states where you just can't get tax stamps, and that's problematic. But for me, I've tried my very best to turn those lemons into lemonade for me personally. Now, the moment that, if you're going to ask me, would I give them all up to make all machine guns, SBRs, SBSs, AOWs, tax-free with no stamp? Yeah, I'd do it tomorrow. No problem. No, that's my opinion. I've said this before. I think everybody should have a nuclear submarine behind their double wide in their swimming pool, above ground, that is. But that's my position on it. But I also am a law-abiding American, and I will follow the laws that are put before me, even if I don't like them.
Yeah, to each their own. You know, I had one braced pistol when this came about. I'm like, I'll just turn it into a regular 16-inch carbine, you know, mainly because I didn't use the damn thing, you know. Bought one. It was like a gimmick, a range toy, and I was like, not my hill to die on, you know. Although, you know, I support fully all the organizations that are running the lawsuits. I hope the lawsuits are successful. I hope it gets overturned. But that's the thing. You bring up a great point, Bruce. At the end of the day, if it's the law of the land, it's the law of the land. I don't have to like it, but I do have to obey it.
Well, and my thing is this, guys. I appreciate the compliment that I'm a good slave. I appreciate that. The thing is this. The thing is this. If you've got a pistol brace, you're already compliant. Because the only reason you've got a pistol brace is because you didn't want to make an illegal SBR. Let's be honest with ourselves. If you don't have that pinhole drilled in your M16, okay, and you don't have a tax stamp for that pinhole, you're already compliant, right? So we're just two sides of the same coin. Now, I've always said, look, I follow the law. I've said on these streams, I don't even have a dog, so don't shoot my dog when you come up. It's going to be the neighbor. I don't even have a dog. Just send me an email, give me a phone call, knock on the door. Like, we're cool. Like, you don't have to come in all tough with me. We'll go down and talk about whatever you want to talk about. But yeah, I mean, if you've guys, if you've got a pistol brace, you're already compliant. You're already compliant with this stupid rule that SBRs need a tax stamp. So they're just coming back in on that. That's all. I mean, it doesn't bother me one bit. But I can either come here on the internet in front of everybody and say, F the federal government, F law enforcement. I do whatever I want. Here's a video of me of drilling a third pinhole in all my ARs and post that up onto YouTube for everybody to see. Or I can just say, look, I'm just going to follow the law, whatever they are. I'll oppose them wherever they are, but I'll follow the law and continue to arm myself the best I can when I do. So that's where we are. I want to real quick to make a quick comment here. I hope I'm not off topic, but to Bass Daddy 2014. Not many of you are going to get to see Pegasus abs. I've seen them. They're as impressive as you think that they are. You're just going to have to trust me with that. But that's not something that might be like a violation of terms of service for Brent Stream, or maybe he can do a lesson hot tub or something like that in the future. But it's a little off topic. Just chatting with Les. We'll see if we can get that going. And you know what? Maybe we'll throw Jared in there for good measure, because I ain't never seen Jared's abs, and I bet they're pretty impressive.
So you guys don't know this, but we all four of us, or anybody that's a guest on there, can send private messages to each other through the streaming services. So we've been sending all kinds of like messages to Les, like, hey, your secret admirer in the chat is wants to see your abs. It's all that stuff. It's been funny.
Yeah, I'm on a rant. All serious.
Just got to find the right video on the channel.
I'm going off on a rant, all serious about the Second Amendment, and these guys are all cracking up. And I know you're like, what the hell are they laughing at? Yeah, it's that background check that's going on.
He might do that thing you like, Les. You don't know.
All right, what else we got, Phillips?
Yes, Mr. A, it is an awkward time to join on the stream. You are absolutely correct. And yes, down there, Chillbogum, SBR should be off the NFA. It's a quirk of the rules left in there from the 1934 National Firearms Act. I don't like it, but apparently there is no political will to change it. And I'm not sure what pressure we can bring on the politicians to remove it from the NFA or get rid of the NFA in general. I wish it didn't exist, but unfortunately it does.
Hell, you're allowed to have silencers in Europe.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know what the worst part about that, Jared, is? Next time I go over to Finland in July for a match, if I wanted to, I could buy a suppressor, just walk in a store. They wouldn't even care I wasn't a finished person.
Exactly.
Just walk in, buy it, and use it. Throw it away when I'm done.
Well, we can thank movies for that, for painting suppressors as these just like tools that you put on your weapon, and you can't hear it. You just murder at will without anybody even knowing.
Yeah,
which
but the
is
funny
completely
part,
not the case.
in the suppressors being regulated in the NFA, it wasn't about that. It was all about poaching.
Yeah, and guys, I'm all about taking machine guns off the NFA. Let's take the NFA off the NFA, right? Let's get rid of defund the BATF by 90% and let them just focus on explosives, or maybe we want to allow explosives. Again, I'm all about
the ATF.
Yeah, I'm guys, I'm on board with you. My only point is like, until that happens, then you're in a situation where either you are compliant with the law or you're not. And if you're not, and you're running around with your pistol brace, you're kind of half-assing it. This is my only point.
Have you guys seen the Netflix special on Waco?
Good topic. I'll let you kick it off, but yes.
It's an interesting special. I mean, if you're going in there and you know nothing about Waco, it's interesting to watch. So, I commend them for bringing up the fact that, like, hey, they could have picked up Koresh out in town, and avoided essentially all of that, and they didn't. They still launched that siege. But what I find very interesting is, like, hey, you had a news reporter that ran into a mailman, okay, and was like, hey, how do I get to this Branch Davidian? There's supposed to be a federal raid on it today. Like there was a leak that got out to the media before they did this mission. And then guess what? The mole, the insider inside the compound, tells them, like, hey, the mission's compromised. They know you're coming. And what do? They still go forward with it. So there's a lot of stuff in there. So yeah. I mean, Waco could be a whole stream in and of itself. But another thing to take note of is, like, the people that are still alive, and like the lady that they interviewed, like, to this day, they're still 100% like, Koresh is like the second coming of Jesus. So that was interesting. I thought it was an interesting special. I know some people have posted like, oh, it's too pro ATF, or it's, this, that, and the other. I found it very interesting to watch, and they absolutely make the point that they could have picked Koresh up out in town and avoided all of this. And the federal agents, for whatever reason, maybe they just wanted to have their names in the paper, or they thought it was going to go without a hitch. They still launched this, massive raid on this compound filled with, women and children, and devolved into a firefight.
They got their
happening in today's times. with social media and all this other crap that we have now.
Well, I've always found the scariest thing about Waco is that combat engineer vehicle, because they didn't walk up to the crew of that and sit there and say, yeah, go burn the building down. They walked up to that crew, that CEV, and went, we need you to get your vehicle up in there because there's guys up in there making meth, molesting kids. And I guarantee you, you tell any tank crew in the entire U.S. military and say, they're molesting kids in there, I need your vehicle in that building, it will be there. And nothing on this planet will stop that from happening. And the funny thing is, you're talking about how the sheriff said he could pick him up out in town, Brett. I remember watching that on the news at the time. The sheriff was telling that to the news while the siege was going on.
Yeah, it's a great show if you guys haven't seen it. And there's probably at least 2 more really good documentaries or dramatizations of what went down there. They've come out in the last few years. Not sure what the kick with the streaming services on producing those are, or what their angle is, but you watch kind of 3 of them back to back, you start to get a real picture of what was going on there and how unbelievably mishandled it is.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a shit show right from the very start, and like all things government, no one got punished out of the deal.
I was just going to ask you, I don't remember there ever being any accountability for any of it.
No, at one point they were going to hammer 2 agents, and all of a sudden they dropped all the charges.
That's the biggest problem from the top down, from Janet Reno down. I don't believe that Janet Reno kept her job. It was all swept under the rug. Everybody was protected, and until there's some accountability, it will continue to happen in this country in one form or another.
And it was pretty low-level agents too that it happened to, right?
Yeah, it was a local office just trying to make a big media splash.
Right. Same thing with this Air National Guard spy. He's low-ranking guy is going to be the fall guy.
Oh yeah, he's going to jail the rest of his life. He's got example written all over him.
Exactly.
Oh, sorry. This comment, like we need more like Bundy standoffs. Mac, I think that you've kind of touched on something there, in that the Bundy standoff didn't end like Waco or didn't end like Ruby Ridge, because the feds saw what a debacle that was. And they put new policies in place going, look, this doesn't mean we can't put our boot on the neck of people, but we don't want a face-to-face confrontation with armed Americans and with cameras around. It's not gonna be a good look. That sort of Russian Soviet idea of going in and addressing people doesn't work very well in the United States and doesn't paint law enforcement in a good light. And that's particularly true today. And so the best thing is, from a self-preservation perspective for law enforcement, is to not get into that. But I also think, from a moral perspective, if a sheriff can go in and get the guy out, that's far better than the situation that unfolded, where a bunch of, no matter what you say about the Branch Davidians, children are innocent, and burning children alive is never a good outcome, no matter who you are, what country that you're in, or what the situation is. So if there's a better way to do it than ending like that, that's what I believe you have to do.
Yeah. Also, another thing, the Bundy's a bad comparison. I've driven from Las Vegas to St. George, Utah. The road takes you through Bunkerville. I've been on that bridge. They were in such a bad tactical position. They had no ability to win. They were in a shooting bowl. Like, if a shot had gone off, every Fed would have been dead in 2 minutes. And that's if the people in the crowd were really bad shots.
What was the one that was, it was several years back. I want to say it was like in Oregon or Washington State. What was that one?
Yeah, that was the second Bundy thing over the, forget the name of the reserve there. They like occupied a some Federal Reserve thing that or
It was
reserve.
overgrazing or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, and they occupied some government buildings in the off season, so like there was nobody there. And it turns
They
out
actually-
like
They actually killed somebody on that one, though.
yeah, Lavoy Finicum, they killed him. Yep.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, and you guys in the chat tell us, that land was called, so you said Fish and Wildlife Office. It had a name like BLM, but it wasn't BLM. But anyway,
Bureau of Land Management.
yeah, someone got
Yeah, there it
shot.
is, Malheur Refuge.
Yeah, someone got shot and killed over that. And I don't believe that they ended up with a conviction on anybody. Am I right about that?
Yeah, there's of all places, Oregon NPR has a great expose on it. It's all video, and it's weird to see it, but NPR throws the feds under the bus big time on that one. And one of the things that's absolutely chilling is they have video from inside the truck they were making with their phones. And when this 18-year-old girl is going to get out of the truck, when they're surrendering, you see her start to get out of the truck, and from her back up to the back of her skull goes a red dot. Mm-hmm. I mean, these people were clearly surrendering, and the government had lasers on them.
Yeah, I just hope that, all law enforcement, takes a step back and just looks at stuff like this and says, look, if we're being called in to address someone who's grazing cattle on federal land and there's a land dispute, okay, maybe federal government, you're absolutely in the right. There's got to be a way to do it without somebody dying over it. That's all I'm saying. Like, there's got to be a better spin on it. That's how I see it. Is there someone not trained in de-escalation to the point that we can come up with a better solution than someone getting killed over this and shot in the back in a pickup truck?
The government only wants to protect you when they want to protect you. They'll kill you or put you in jail or prison. They don't give a shit about you. It's only what you can do for them.
You're not wrong, Jared.
Well, we're about 18 minutes away from 2-hour mark. So you guys good for wrapping this up?
Sounds like it.
Unless you guys got another topic.
No, what have you got there, chat room?
So, I mean, Waco, when was that? 93?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, they definitely were taught a lesson from that, right? Because, I mean, we haven't seen a raid to that level since then. And then, obviously, Timothy McVeigh used that as his reasoning for destroying or setting off the bomb in the federal building. So, I mean, has there been a raid?
That's right. And he was there. He was at Waco, which is the
Yeah.
interesting thing, right? I didn't know that. And when I watched this documentary, there he is on camera being interviewed in Waco selling, I don't know, pamphlets or bumper stickers or something. And you're like, wow, that's like Timothy McVeigh, man. And like, you can go real deep down the rabbit hole on conspiracy theories there and whether he actually did it, this and that. There's conspiracy theories around everything. But I think that was interesting. And hey, say what you want. He certainly got his pound of flesh.
Hey, I want to throw this out there because I remember this. McVeigh was arrested, tried, convicted, and executed. I mean, super fast.
Mm-hmm.
And when you think about like the terrorists responsible for 9/11, right? The mastermind, who's that? Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. Like, he's still being held. You know, he hasn't been put to death. So, I mean, what the fuck? Like, isn't it kind of interesting how that whole process was just completely expedited? I mean, you think about dudes that are on death row, they're on death row for decades, right? Multiple appeal processes.
Careful, Brent. You'll sound like a conspiracy theorist.
I'm just pointing it out, man, because I remember, I mean, I was obviously a young man, but I mean, dude, they tried, convicted him, and sentenced him to death in record timing. And
Probably
Yeah,
because
it was like
McVay
6
still had a
years.
lot more to
The
say.
death penalty is record time. But then what did Mr. McVeigh do? He killed the feds. You know, that was going to get it done real quick. Because you notice here, not to sound anti-law enforcement, but when somebody kills a law enforcement officer, they throw up all the things they need to do to get that guy. Look at Eric Frayne, that guy who killed that Pennsylvania state trooper up in northeastern PA. They basically put 3 counties under martial law, allowed troopers to come in from other states. ATF and marshals were out there searching for the guy for over a month. I'm pretty sure somebody goes out and whacks some of my family members, law enforcement's not doing all that effort to go catch him. Pretty damn sure. You know, and
That kid did the ultimate sear challenge there.
I want to say there's a real good documentary on that too, and how they finally ended up catching up with him. But he had a hell of a compound built out in the woods somewhere, and was moving from place to place. I saw the show a couple years ago. It was a good show.
Yeah, he had caches set up everywhere. He had put a lot of thought into that. I can't remember his last name, Eric something.
Frayne, Eric Frayne.
That's right. Thank you.
I don't know if this is true. This guy's saying it, so I'm just posting it. So that would make sense if that's accurate.
Yeah.
All right, guys, we're like at the 14-minute mark. So I'm going to go around the horn, and we had a kind of a smaller panel tonight. That's not a bad thing. Just more talking by less people. So not bad from shooting from the hip. We really didn't have a topic. I was trying to think of something that would be a topic tonight, but all the stuff that's out there right now, I was like, I don't know if we could do a full show over that. Like, there's just not much difference of opinion on a lot of this stuff. So figured it'd be an interesting time, just, shooting from the hip, coming up with things, and seeing what some of the audience had. So I appreciate you guys throwing out the ideas. And I know we had a lot of super chats tonight, so I appreciate that as well. That helps fund the live streaming service and fund future Vietnam flicks with Bruce and I, because we are officially, guys, in Vietnam season. The woods have grown in, and we got to get our black pajamas out and start producing some content on that. So I will say I'm very disappointed. I didn't get around to doing the Korean. We've been planning this Korean War gear, weapons, and equipment video for years. And I thought I finally got this one bazooka that I was waiting on getting. It's a replica, obviously. And I finally got it, and I was like, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. And then spring hit.
It hit so fast this year. Things
Yes.
turned green so fast.
Yeah.
I can't, you guys can't imagine. In Texas, it went from being dead and brown to green in under 2 weeks. It's crazy.
Yes. And a video like this, guys, if you've ever watched the uniform gear and equipment videos we've done over whatever the case may be, Vietnam, infantry, freaking LURBs, MAC-VSOG, like, you guys have no idea how many hours go into doing that. Matter of fact, the MAC-VSOG video, Bruce and I filmed over 2 days. Like, it was 2 separate days of filming. It was just absolute beating. So anyways, I say that to say this, like, it's a lot in-depth process, and I thought we were going to get to it, but we didn't. And now I can't bear putting on all these cold weather equipment with what looks like a Vietnam jungle behind me, for a video. So we're gonna have to wait till the winter hits or something, fall or something. But all right, guys, go around the horn. Final thoughts on tonight and anything you got coming down the pipe on your respective YouTube channel. Les, you got the con. Go.
Hoorah. All right. So good free flowing topics tonight. Covered a lot of good stuff. When Brent said this was going to be a general Q&A, I had no idea where things were going to go. I'm glad we didn't end up spending a lot of time talking about Bud Light. As for what's coming up on my channel, got a lot of gear test videos coming. I bought a lot of neat equipment lately that I'm going to go out and test that I think is going to make some great videos y'all want to check out. over the summer months, I'll be traveling overseas again to bring you all good coverage of the Hatila and Finnish brutality shooting matches. And I hope you find that all enjoyable.
All right, guys. So I do have a new camera, and I'm going to be doing some stuff on my YouTube coming up fairly soon. I've got several videos that are like 80% filmed that just need to do like some final couple of scenes and then wrap them up and drop them off on there. These are going to be sort of based around some AK stuff that I'm doing. So something a little bit different speed there. To give you guys a little different perspective, I was thinking about this throughout the stream, but I didn't really bring it up. But on our initial topic of the guy that ended up using a handgun to defend himself against a protester with an AK, I think that this kind of calls into question, and we should think about the opposite side of this coin. Let's say that you want to go out and protest, which is your right. You want to carry an AK, which is your right. Might you, whether you're actually a threat to that person or not, if you're perceived as a threat, do you end up getting shot even though maybe you're not doing anything threatening? We'll just take the left's narrative to this. Maybe. And I think that's something we should always think about whenever we're presenting a firearm, even for personal defense, that not only do you have to ensure and convey to law enforcement that you're the good guy, not the bad guy. That can be challenging sometimes. But also that to other people that are armed around you, that you're not the threat, that you are the solution. So just difficult, complex things to think about. It reminds me of a situation where there was an off-duty law enforcement officer that used his firearm to defend himself, and other cops responded and shot him, thinking he was the bad shooter and not realizing that he was an off-duty cop. These things happen. They're complicated. They're fluid. I'm not sure what the right answer is. And, maybe we could have someone from, maybe this is a future stream, have someone from law enforcement come in, give us some suggestions, because I've also wondered the same thing. I would hate to use my firearm in a situation and then have someone else mistake me for being the aggressor and shoot me. So just something to think about there, guys. Other than that, hey, thanks for the stream. This was a fun one, and I'll hand it off to the other guys.
Muted.
Yeah, I'm muted. So I think the self-defense mindset is to not put yourself in that situation, to remove yourself from it when possible. If you are in a self-defense situation and you fire shots, your world is going to be changed forever. And if you're in a politically distressed area, you're probably going to get charged. And you're going to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars to try to prove your innocence, and you're going to lose your house, everything. So just keep that in mind with today's day and age. If you do have to shoot, just make sure it's airtight. Other than that, I don't have anything else for that. My channel, 2 Alpha Solutions, look it up. It's a very basic channel right now. There's not much on it. I was going to do some filming this past weekend and got into another project out in the shop and didn't get it done. So hopefully this weekend I can get some filming done. The other reason is the person that I was going to do one of the videos on had to reschedule. I think we're going to try to do that this Saturday, and hopefully I can get that uploaded. We'll get that filmed and uploaded here in the next couple weeks. So if you guys haven't already seen my channel, look it up and subscribe to it. A very small channel. I think I have 136 subscribers right now. So nothing like these other guys have. And like I said, there's not much on it, but there's some content that I have that's coming for it. So I appreciate you having me on, Brett.
All right, guys. Appreciate you guys jumping on tonight and doing the live stream. We did not have a live stream last Monday because I had some stuff come up, and I was planning on doing an interview with my buddy who's a retired Navy SEAL. And if some of you guys have seen an interview, if you haven't, I encourage you to go over there and check it out. But in any event, that was filmed. It was supposed to be Monday night. Couldn't do it because some things came up, but I ended up filming it Tuesday night. And I posted it, I think, on Thursday or Friday morning. But a great interview. and just a good buddy of mine that I served with in the Marine Corps and Bravo Company, 1st Battalion, 4th Marines, and we served 2 tours in Iraq together. And he went later on and served in Navy SEALs. And he had some aspirations at the end of his career of running for political office. And because of that, the Navy kind of reeled him in and pretty much sidelined his career and prevented him from running in that election. So it's a great interview. I highly encourage you guys to go check that out if you haven't already done it. So that's let me add to that in regards to what else I have coming on my channel. I've got some new uniforms from Phantom Leaf, and it's a camouflage company in Germany, and they just sent me some uniforms out. I'm putting that together. I'm hoping I can go film tomorrow. We'll see how that pans out, but that's going to come down the pipe as well. So in terms of what we did tonight, guys, it was a great conversation tonight, and I appreciate these guys jumping on. And for shooting for the hip, I think we did pretty good. So thanks again to the commenters for contributing the super chats and just throwing your IDs out there and interacting with us tonight. So good stuff. So does anybody have any final saved rounds? Because I've got nothing, fellas. I think we covered everything pretty well tonight.
No, it's a good show.
Good stuff. All right. Well, I appreciate you guys tuning in tonight. You see you on the next one.